Hey everybody, welcome back. Craig Shoup here with George Thomas, our film critic from the Akron Beacon Journal. George is here, and we have a very special show tonight, George. Would you believe that we'd be talking about movies that are going to be releasing in theaters this summer?
Yeah, scary proposition, isn't it?
It
But
is, but it's exciting. It's an exciting one because it's look, we love streaming. We love checking out new shows, even movies that are releasing on streaming, but there's nothing quite like the theatrical experience. We've talked about it before, and it seems like for the first time, maybe even post-COVID, or at least maybe the first time since Barbenheimer, we feel like we have a nice summer slate of movies, albeit with a lot of sequels, prequels, threequels, whatever it may be. And in the case of one movie, I think it's the seventh movie in the series. But there are a lot of expectations for a big box office return this summer, coming off of a good spring as well with the Minecraft movie. Sinners is making a ton of money, which is awesome to see. Thunderbolts had a good opening weekend as well. But George, you got to write something that we'll be posting very soon about the summer box office and some of the movies that you are anticipating this year. What are your overall thoughts on this slate that you had a chance to write about?
There's nothing unpredictable about the summer. Usually, it's usually unpredictable when something shows up that you'd expect. Something shows up that you expect to be one thing or another, which is unpredictable by definition. But let's try this. Has it been 5 years since the first Spider-Verse movie? Might be.
I think so.
I walked into that not expecting a lot. It ended up
Yeah.
winning the Oscar for best animated feature that year, and
Yeah.
I was blown away by it. So,
Yeah.
it's nice to get a surprise like that.
And speaking of that movie, my wife and I didn't even catch that in theaters. We watched it years later, right before we were going to see Across the Spider-Verse in Dolby Cinema here in Middle Tennessee. We just thought, hey, we want to see a Dolby Cinema movie. Let's watch this. Well, we haven't seen the first one, so let's see the first one. And we were both pleasantly surprised and have really enjoyed the series, and we're very upset when the threequel in that series was delayed due to the writer's strike and other various reasons. But very hopeful that will come out, I think, next year or maybe in 27. I can't remember what the delay on that one is right now, but very excited. And you're right. It's great to experience something. I kind of felt that way with Barbie, honestly, even though it had the backing of Greta Gerwig directing, her and Noah Baumbach writing, Margot Robbie, a great actress and a great cast with Ryan Gosling, among others. It was a pleasant surprise at the box office, but even more pleasant to me that I felt a great time at the movies, one of the best experiences I've had. And I watched it. My wife and I went to that movie at like 6:45 in the morning. So it was a very early Dolby Cinema, but it was a worthy trip to the theaters. And then also saw Oppenheimer in the 70 millimeter print as well in Middle Tennessee. So it was a very exciting summer for us. But there are hopefuls for this summer box office. Let's maybe dive right into it. Not sure if you want to go chronologically or maybe pick out a few and we can kind of go over the monthly and weekly schedules. But anything that stand out to you as we are in the month of May, both of our birthday months. So anything that you're interested in the month of May?
Oh, absolutely. And I write this over the past, and it's been, good Lord, I think it's been 20 years since Ethan Hunt first came into our lives via film. And in those 20 years, there has been one, and I can't even call it a bad Mission Impossible film. I can call it a disappointing Mission Impossible film. And that was Mission Impossible 3.
I like Mission Impossible 3.
No, sorry, Mission Impossible 2.
Oh, the John Woo.
Right,
yeah.
3 revived the franchise because everybody wrote it off after 2.
Right.
2 was disappointing, but it's like, I wrote this. It has been the most consistent, intelligent, action franchise of the past 2 decades.
Yeah.
And
Well, and really 3 decades didn't. I believe the first De Palma movie came out in '96, did it not? So we're almost 3 decades into this
well,
franchise.
I couldn't remember the exact year,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And I
So
think I think you're right. Even more than consistent, I would argue that it has gotten better with age. Like it really has. I think it's maybe taken a page out of the Jason Bourne films, and it's kind of incorporated a little bit more of the action. We got more of the stunts. Obviously, Mission Impossible 2 certainly did that with John Woo directing, but I think the storytelling got a little bit more in the political, harder kind of realm, like you saw with some of the Bourne Supremacy movies. Which I also think was a series, a franchise that inspired a lot of the reboot of James Bond movies with Daniel Craig leading the way too. So, but yeah, I mean, I was a fan of the Mission Impossible series, and I enjoyed number 3. I thought, like you said, it reinvigorated the franchise. But then I would say too that Ghost Protocol. I remember my wife and I saw that in theaters in IMAX, and it was an otherworldly experience for me watching that in IMAX. It was the kind of movie that had I not seen it in IMAX, I don't know if I would have given it the grade that I did. But seeing Tom Cruise scaling the Burj Khalifa in IMAX, running from the dust storm, it was just a really fascinating movie going experience. And even though I've kind of lost touch a little bit and more so just watch them at home lately, I've been very impressed with what they've done. Christopher McQuarrie taking it over and really putting a nice stamp on this as a director. And then, of course, there's always the weird, unworldly, crazy stunt that Tom Cruise is performing in his mid-50s and now early 60s, which is just crazy to think.
see, the nice thing about McQuarrie is he came in and he wasn't just a director. I don't think he was more of a collaborator.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can point to him as when the series really, really upped its game.
Yeah.
The game was always there, but it kind of went just a little bit beyond what it had been.
Yeah.
And I think it's because everybody works with Cruise, but he worked with Cruise, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah.
And I look forward to every one of these movies. I even look forward to 2, but after seeing 2,
Right.
but
It's definitely a little step down from some of the other missions. But that's, again, I think that's a testament to the quality that it has brought since it kind of had that reimagining from Mission Impossible 3 on. It really, Mission Impossible 2 was a complete opposite of the De Palma, more espionage, spy versus spy kind of movie with a little bit of action, a lot less action. So I think they said, hey, well, we want action, so let's get John Woo, of course, to do the action. And why wouldn't you? Because he's John Woo. But in that case, it probably just was a tonal shift maybe that a lot of the Mission Impossible fans just didn't quite get at the time. But, I mean, there's something to appreciate about it. It's a high wire act of extravagant action set pieces and solid looking visuals. So yeah, but it definitely doesn't hold a lot of candles to the current versions of what we've seen with the Mission Impossible series.
But it did give us a kick-ass Metallica song.
Right.
So yeah, we're in agreement on that. It's like, that there are a few action films better than any movie in this series except 2. So there we go.
Right. And this is kind of also a special release too. Obviously, not that he's retiring from acting, but Tom Cruise is sort of allowing this to be his ride off into the action movie sunset, where maybe he's going to start slowing down a little bit as far as making these types of movies, which, at age, I don't know if you saw that screenshot of him where they were working on that underwater scene where he just looks like he's absolutely jacked at age 62. It's incredible to think that this guy has had the longevity he's had as an action star, and he really is the classic movie star.
The nice thing about doing this stuff, one of the few nice things about doing this stuff in the digital age, is that the studios most of the studios willingly provide you promotional stuff to work into your stories.
Right.
And I put together a video playlist, and one was with featurettes, and one was from Mission Impossible. And there's Cruise shirtless, and it's like, nah, he's beyond Jack, dude.
Yeah.
and he's my age, so
Not many 62-year-olds looking like him anymore, I would say. But
no.
it's obviously Thunderbolts kind of kicked off the new tradition of the summer movie, early May release. But holiday weekend, it's going to be tough to beat Mission Impossible. I hope that the movie, I don't know what the plans are moving forward. Obviously, there's always going to be talk about, would they continue this franchise moving forward with someone else? Dead Reckoning didn't quite do the box office I think people anticipated, so much so that they decided to take the part one off of it and then change the name of this movie to The Final Reckoning. We'll see what the box office will hold, and I would imagine over the holiday weekend it should do pretty well. It's going up against the live action Lilo and Stitch. It'll have Thunderbolts still in theaters. Sinners will still be around as well, but I have a feeling that you might see a little bit more return to form here for Tom Cruise in his final really big action set piece movie.
Well, the thing is, they're doing something smart. They're going head to head, but they're splitting the audience.
Right.
Nine times out of 10, if you're going to see Lilo and Stitch, you're taking your kids and you're not taking them to Mission Impossible. Maybe as a parent, you go to that without the kids another time.
True.
So they conceivably, we could, like I wrote, you could get a couple Barbenheimer moments this summer. We'll see.
Well, and I know the next week, Wes Anderson, sort of an Academy.
You're gonna call me on this, aren't you? You're gonna call me on this.
No, because this is a movie that's coming out in the summer blockbuster season. Although I wouldn't call Wes Anderson a blockbuster director.
No.
Wes Anderson, writer-director, well beloved by the Academy, several Oscar nominations. He finally won an Oscar for, of all things, a short film a couple of years ago. But he does have the Phoenician Scheme, which, again, this is going to be classic Wes Anderson, quirky, over-the-top, weird, but also a great cast. So it's probably worth mentioning. Like, if you're looking for something different that you would normally not see in the summer box office, the Phoenician Scheme might be the movie for you.
But see, and here's the thing. All of the Wes Anderson movies I've seen over the years, I don't recall laughing out loud at the trailer.
Right.
And I saw the trailer for this, and I laughed out loud more than a few times.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, you have my attention. Because if we're being honest, Wes Anderson is an acquired taste.
I agree. The only taste that I've acquired on him is probably the Grand Budapest Hotel, which, for all the Wes Anderson movies out there, it's probably the most condensed and honed in Wes Anderson. It's quirky, but quirky in the best ways, like with, Ralph Fiennes' performance, for instance. And, I think it worked on those levels. Other movies, they're good. It's just, for me, it's what differentiates those movies from the last Wes Anderson movie or the Wes Anderson movie he made 10 years ago. So, I'm always skeptical of Wes Anderson movies, when it comes Oscar season, because I think the Academy's gotten to the point now where, we've seen the quirky shtick. Let's see something else maybe. And then, like, Grand Budapest Hotel was a prime example, and it just so happened, he didn't win an Oscar for it, but that was the kind of movie that the Academy's like, make that movie and we will give you your flowers come Academy Award season.
I'll see. I like The French Dispatch. I'll cop to that. That one was interesting. Same Wes Anderson vibe. Maybe it's because it had different vignettes. I don't know.
Okay.
But that resonated with me, and he has a knack of picking up A-list by reputation.
Yeah.
I throw that around. I think the general public has a different opinion of what's A-list to them and what's A-list to you and me.
Right.
So when you pick up somebody like Jeffrey Wright, to
One of our
join
favorites.
your little entourage of your company of performers in something like the French Dispatch.
Yeah,
That tells me a lot about you. Jeffrey Wright is an A-list actor. I don't care what
absolutely.
people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So and he's back in this film. So I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully they screen it here.
Yeah. Well, and there's never a shortage, too. I mean, of A-list actor. I mean, we're talking Benicio del Toro, Tom Hanks. You of course mentioned one of our favorites, Jeffrey Wright, Scarlett Johansson, Benedict Cumberbatch. I mean, it is dripping with Academy Awards nominations and victories. And I would venture to guess that Wes Anderson is not in a situation where he's paying these people full freight to be in his movies, which is a testament to their belief in his ability as a filmmaker and as a writer to put the best out on the screen. So we'll definitely see what the final results are. But again, a great cast, and always worth mentioning, Wes Anderson gives the summer box office movie a little palate cleanser if you're not looking for action movie number 15 in a series. This could be something for people that they maybe go after. Another movie that's ending the month is kind of going back to the well, Karate Kid Legends. Ralph Macchio's back. We've got Jackie Chan, who came from the 2010. Was that a reboot? I can't even remember. Was that a
It was billed as a reboot, but part of me thinks, okay, this is a money grab.
right? Oh
But
yeah. Well,
part,
what isn't a
part
money grab?
yeah, but part of me is like, okay, this is pretty cool.
Right.
So I'm gonna give it a chance, but you gotta understand. 1984, when the Karate Kid came out, I saw it in the theaters. It was one of the first VHS tapes I owned, and it even though I was just out of high school, it resonated with me. So it gets a shot.
Okay.
It
Well,
definitely gets a shot.
all right. Well, other movies, Final Destination, Bloodlines, and Jane Austen Wrecked My Life coming out in May as well. June is an interesting month, though, George. We've got our first Pixar movie coming out. It's Elio, which is an original movie. So that's great to see Pixar coming out with something that's not necessarily a sequel, even though, they've had some successes with their sequels and prequels and branch off movies, whatever. But what are your thoughts on Disney Pixar's latest attempt to try to maybe kind of regain that magic a little bit?
I haven't heard a lot about it. I glanced at the what video. It's Pixar. It's gonna look gorgeous, but
Right.
because it's Pixar, it's gonna get a shot with me. It's that simple. Beyond that, I'm saying I'm intrigued by it because it's Pixar. That's ultimately it in a nutshell. So
Yeah, it's definitely. I don't know if it's. I don't want to say that it's not coming with as much fanfare as maybe some of the other Pixar hits. Like you're getting beat over the head with advertising or anticipation, but it doesn't seem like the anticipation is dripping as much as it would for not even other sequels. But I think Elemental seemed to have a lot of backing, even though that was maybe a little less successful than some of the best of Pixar. But this one seems like it was announced a few years ago, and then it was just like this title, and no one knew anything about it. They didn't have pictures, and it was kind of exciting at that time, but it's kind of lost a little steam maybe for me as far as seeking it out, I guess, if that
um
makes sense.
yeah, it's normally you've heard a lot about a Pixar release by now.
Right.
And I don't know if it's by design or not, but I can't even say deliberate, but it's the lack of marketing in the month of May for a film opening in June seems conspicuous by its absence. So I guess we'll see.
Well, and it's going to have some competition. Now, again, another one of these split family competition, because I don't think the kids are going to be going to 28 days later, or 28 years later, I should say. This is another dip into the well of a successful, franchise with the zombie apocalypse. But this time, Danny Boyle is back in the saddle. And, obviously Danny Boyle's had one of these very interesting careers where he's made some really intriguing films. He's made a great film in like Slumdog Millionaire, for instance. I really enjoyed Sunshine, the science fiction, sort of a modest science fiction epic where they have to reignite the sun from the early 2000s. But then, he's made 127 Hours. But then he's also kind of made some forgettable movies as well. So it's kind of a hit and miss with Danny Boyle. Are you interested in 28 years later in this reboot of this once cult classic franchise?
Well, I enjoyed 28 Days Later. I didn't see the sequel.
Okay.
But it's Danny Boyle. Trainspotting.
Yep.
So he's one of those directors. You mentioned the up and down career there, but he's one of those directors you give a shot simply based on his reputation.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'm not a big zombie fan. People keep telling me how great The Last of Us is, and I still haven't checked it out.
Right.
And it's like, it just doesn't interest me that much as a topic.
I've never been a huge zombie fan, although I will say the two times that I have really enjoyed zombie movies are Shaun of the Dead and Zombieland. And those movies, from a tonal perspective, I think understood the assignment, which was satirize the genre, because zombies don't make for a very interesting antagonist,
No.
like they didn't in World War Z, for instance. Although maybe I guess if you want to loop in, I don't know what you would loop in with I Am Legend. I really enjoyed I Am Legend with Will Smith, but I kind of think that was on like a weirder vampire zombie hybrid weird thing. So I'm not sure if I would classify that as a zombie movie, and they never really call it Zombies, if I'm not mistaken. So, I think tonally you almost have to be more satirical. But again, the 28 Days Later, those movies were not necessarily in that vein, and maybe Danny Boyle can strike some magic, and people are always looking for something different, and that could be it. And obviously June's going to have some interesting challengers. Brad Pitt, we talked about movie stars with Tom Cruise. Well, here's one of those other pinnacle movie stars of Hollywood's golden age, and Brad Pitt coming into the fold with F1. Now, this is a very interesting movie because it's a Warner, isn't it a Warner Brothers and Apple product? So it's going to be a theatrical release, but then I think it's also going to go on Apple TV Plus at some point, right?
Well, it'll be an Apple TV Plus exclusive, I'm sure, but it's going to get a prolonged, for today, theatrical window. So, it's interesting. I think Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt both, although Brad Pitt has always had a relatively interesting career, are getting ready to transition to that next phase.
Yeah.
Where maybe they turn into that character actor with gravitas. You know what I mean?
Right.
Still that A-list standard because they got the skills.
Yeah.
But it's let's call him the next De Niro,
mm-hmm.
the next Pacino, because that's what they transitioned to, and they're both in their 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I think that's where they're headed, and if this movie is any indication, what I've seen from it, with the setup of him being a potential mentor to a younger hotshot Formula One driver on the same racing team,
mm-hmm.
he's telegraphing what he's doing. So more power to him. But see, they have to, I hope they filmed this in IMAX. I'm not sure. Because this is a movie you go to the theater for to literally get your face blown off.
Oh, yeah. I would think this would be if I'm not mistaken, this is directed by Joseph Kosinski, who has worked with Tom Cruise. He also made a movie that I like, Tron Legacy, which I know maybe most people didn't like, but I thought it was extremely well shot. And of course, in the world of Tron, it's easy to look beautiful because of the color scheme and the palette and everything. But, Kosinski, I wouldn't say he's like an elite filmmaker, but he is also off of Top Gun Maverick, if I'm not mistaken. So he's proven himself. And I think that as the months go on, and we're only a month and a half away from the release, but as the time goes on, I'm assuming they're going to be hammering home some of his previous successes, so people actually take notice of this, other than just the fact that Brad Pitt is, starring in a movie. But there's a lot to like about this. I mean, we've got a good cast, and again, like you said, if this is filmed in IMAX, then the expectations would be that this is just going to be a visceral experience, like very few films this year can probably get you. I mean, I'm all in, right? It's Brad Pitt, Formula One. He probably has to pass the torch in the movie, because, he and Tom Cruise passing the torch. I don't know who they're passing the torch to in real life, because I think we've gotten so desensitized in the world of Hollywood to stars and movie stars, where now you're thinking like, and I think, directors like a Quentin Tarantino has mentioned this, where, Chris Evans is not a movie star. Captain America is the star. Now, I'm not saying Chris Evans isn't a star, but, the idea is that the property they're playing is the star, and that's what they're well known for, as opposed to the actual movie star themselves, which, I think there's a valid argument to that. But you can't deny the box office appeal of Brad Pitt, the movie screen presence. I mean, this is a guy that I'm excited for his future, because he's going to be in a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood spinoff. That's Cliff Booth with David Fincher, of all people, directing. So, I mean, sign me up for that before it's even a thought in someone's mind at this point. But very interested to see what they do here. And obviously this is going to be one of those kind of a visually stimulating movie, I would imagine.
I suspect so, especially remembering Top Gun Maverick. So,
yeah. Well, and also, there's How to Train Your Dragon. This is a live action movie. Live action movies of animated ventures have been hit and miss, needless to say. Obviously, this is going to be sort of competing with the back end of Lilo and Stitch, I would imagine, and also might take away some of the box office of Elio as well, the Pixar movie that's coming out the previous weeks, or actually it's coming out the next week, I think. So it'll be interesting to see. Are you interested in any of those other June movies? Deep Cover, How to Train Your Dragon, Bry Hard, Megan 2.0?
No.
I know you're so interested in those horror movies now that you've seen Sinners. You're a horror genre fan.
And I saw Megan 2.0 on the schedule. I'm like, nah, I'll pass. But no, not really. And and I'm gonna go completely cynical on you, because How to Train Your Dragon is opening 3 weeks after Universal Studios Orlando opens Epic Universe, and that's one of the new lands in that theme park. So no, nothing to see here. No tie-in.
No.
No.
I just wonder, and maybe I'll be the first to admit, I have not seen any of the How to Train Your Dragon movies.
Neither have I.
And I just wonder, is the appetite for this movie out there? I mean, I'm not saying the other movies haven't done well, but the first movie, the animated movie, came out in 2010, and then you had a sequel in 14, and then you had another one in 19, and then apparently, I'm assuming this How to Train Your Dragon 2 for 2027 is another live action sequel. I mean, is DreamWorks kind of putting the cart before the horse on this a little bit, maybe?
There are theme park tickets to sell.
Well, they better hope that people love the movie and love the theme park ride, because otherwise they're investing money into something that, and again, the quality of it is irrelevant when it comes to whether it's a hit or not. It just needs to be a hit. It needs to be profitable for the studio to care. I said the same thing about Sinners. Like, if Sinners was a 20% on RottenTomatoes.com, Warner Brothers wouldn't have cared if it made $500 million.
Very true. But just to correct you, it's not just a ride. They're giving it an entire land.
Okay. So this is big deal then. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So that's why I'm so cynical. They've got a lot riding on this theme park. And,
well, I hate to keep the cynical train running, but speaking of potential 20% Rotten Tomato critic scores, Jurassic World is back. Rebirth. I'm sorry, George. I don't mean to be cynical, but I've gotten into arguments with some of my friends about this at work that are excited about Jurassic World Rebirth.
Why?
Because and from my standpoint, it is the first Jurassic Park movie with Steven Spielberg was a very good movie.
The book was great too.
Right. However, there should never have been any other movies after that because the idea of having that world exist anymore makes zero sense, because after it failed the first time, everybody and their mother should have said, do we really want velociraptors running around the world? And then we get this rebooted franchise of a theme park or whatever you want to call the Jurassic World with Chris Pratt.
Oh, we can do it better. We're safer. Blah, blah, blah.
Right. Again, it makes no sense. This franchise makes no sense being a franchise. It makes a lot of sense being a one-off movie where Steven Spielberg makes this movie and it's like, okay, you know, we've learned our lesson. We will never let a raptor get out in the wild, or we'll never let a T-Rex be able to climb a fence that cannot push it back anymore. There are so many things that can go wrong when you're trying to have a theme park or a world. I mean, are they going to have a How to Train Your Dragon world that has a dragon? I mean, come on. This franchise makes zero sense.
Nothing, but I'm gonna offer a mild defense in that.
Okay.
Directors using it to continuously explore the arrogance of the human race.
Okay.
And but even that gets old. Even that's old.
And look, I mean, as when you're talking about Gareth Edwards as the director, he made Rogue One a Star Wars story, which is very good, extremely good Star Wars. You've got Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah. The best the original.
Yeah. You've got Mahershala Ali, Scarlett Johansson, two great actors. So I'm very excited about that. But then I'm also like, okay, I'm glad that they're going to be paid handsomely for this movie. And I don't know why Scarlett Johansson was like begging to be in a Jurassic Park movie, but cool for her. She's going to get a paycheck. Mahershala Ali will get a paycheck. Good for him as well. But I just feel like this is a tired franchise that we're beating it to death now to this point.
I think I wrote that.
I believe you did. I'm looking. Yes, you did. Beat the dinos to death. Well, everybody will be able to read that soon enough when it posts. But yeah, it is what it is. But
I am looking forward to one thing in it.
Okay.
Manuel Garcia Rufo, Mickey Holler from The Lincoln Lawyer is in it. So
okay.
I'm looking forward to seeing what he does outside of that.
Okay. Well, and so for those of you who do care and hate me, Jurassic World Rebirth does come out July 2nd. So if you want to have a dud of a fireworks display, maybe go to the latest Jurassic Park movie. So I think July is shaping up to be a better month than June, though, you know, all things considered with Jurassic World. But we get another Superman, James Gunn, his first big kick at the can here with the DC film universe. It shot in Cleveland. You have to be kind of excited. Are you excited about the latest Superman?
As much as I hate the retro look in Fantastic Four, I'm not a fan of the Superman retro look either. So Let me get that off my chest. But
right.
I'm also a local boy, and I'm rooting for this movie, and I want to see this movie because yes, it was shot in Cleveland, and Cleveland was all over the trailer. Cleveland is all over this film, so absolutely. And it's James Gunn, and you know, the Guardian of the Galaxy movies are probably three of the best in the MCU. They're all three are at least in the top 10, I think.
Yeah,
but
and he also proved that you can make a good Suicide Squad movie as well.
He turned
no one saw that.
Yeah, he turned that around, but the audience didn't follow. But
right.
So yeah, I am definitely looking forward to it. I'm gonna get a screening. We're gonna get a screening of F1. Wow.
Yeah. Here's why I'm sort of tempered in my expectations on this. Because one is, and I've told you this before, I am not a big fan of the Superman character on screen. I don't think it's like probably why we don't see a lot of Incredible Hulk movies, because the Incredible Hulk is too powerful. it's almost impossible to beat the Incredible Hulk. And it is probably then more impossible to beat Superman, right? He is, yes, there is the kryptonite literally that could kill him, but again, we don't really see that very often. And at the end of the day, I will say you've kind of turned me around a little bit on Man of Steel. I still don't like it because I thought the action sequence pacing was a little bit too jarring, and the quick camera cuts that we get with this faster than a speeding bullet, we have to show this faster than a speeding bullet, when I think they could have probably taken a little bit more from the Matrix franchise where you can dodge bullets in slow motion in bullet time. Instead, Zack Snyder, in his classic ways, like to speed things up. And I think I'm assuming we're going to get more of the same here with James Gunn, because you want to show the ability of Superman. But I just feel like, and I got caught watching Shazam, Gods of Fury, or whatever the sequel was to that.
Why?
Which was, it was on HBO live channels, and I just had something playing in the background. And every time I looked up, it was hyper camera movement, fast action. It just, no. So I'm assuming that you're going to see more of that with Superman. I will say this, though. The other issue I have is James Gunn, you mentioned it. Fine films with the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. I enjoyed the Suicide Squad version that he did. But the problem I have here is the tones are going to be way different in those movies than they will be with a Superman movie that will probably be grounded in more serious drama. And probably, there'll probably be a little bit of comic relief here to release some of the tension. But I feel like the successes of those movies they were quirky for superhero genre movies. They were off the beaten path a little bit. And I think Superman is going to have to be less of that. And I don't know that that's James Gunn's MO as a director and a writer. I think that's not his wheelhouse, but he's a good filmmaker. I think he's a good visual stylist. And I think if he can maybe bring some of those elements that you saw from the Suicide Squad movie and the Guardians movies into this, I think you could have a movie that is successful. And I think the less Superman, the more in this one. Like, treat it like Jaws. Less shark is more. Less Superman might be more. The more
Clark Kent?
just the more interesting story might be Clark Kent being a weird, gangly, unsure of himself hero in the underneath as he's putting this persona on.
I will say that, judging in another featurette went in a video playlist I put together.
Mm-hmm.
David Cornsweet looks, you could recognize Chris Reeve.
Yeah.
Christopher Reeve was Superman. You had to be a fool not to recognize. Cornsweet looks, and you could do the same with Zack Snyder's Superman. You how could you not?
Yeah.
He looks more into the role of Clark Kent. You know what I mean? Where he's less so. Now, Christopher Reeve
played that in Twisters last year too. He was sort of the buff, geeky, wearing glasses sidekick, the science nerds, but he just happened to be like, 6'3", 230 pounds of muscle or whatever too, though. But yeah, I know what you mean though.
I think Christopher Reeve had the persona down, but physically you couldn't actually buy it because he looked physically imposing. Even with the slumping, he looked imposing. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
There we have it. It's like, I'm a Cleveland guy. Schuster and Siegel grew up 20 minutes from my house, so let's rock and roll. I'm with the Man of Steel this summer.
Okay. Well, and then as a palate cleanser, I know what you did last summer on July 18th. And then, of course, the biggie at the end of the month, Fantastic Four, First Steps, the movie that you're least interested in maybe in seeing in July. You're not a fan of the retro look. I know you've mentioned that. And obviously this is a new version of the Fantastic Four. We've had a couple of iterations of this franchise before, although this is the first iteration under the exclusive Marvel umbrella. So we are getting away from the old 20th Century Fox stuff that just was not good. I'm not I'm probably a little bit more excited than you are to see this, but it's not something that's on my movie bucket list though necessarily, only because at the end of the day, I've kind of gotten marveled out a little bit, but then also kind of like, well, maybe the Fantastic Four just isn't a main character movie kind of property.
I don't know. It had all the cartoons in the late '60s, man. I honestly think the problem with it is it wasn't done right, both in
It was
both
not.
versions. And that's why with the PD, the production design, I'm thrown off because I'm not a fan of it. I really am not. But the director the director of the film is Matt Shackman. Is it Shackman or Shankman? Shackman.
I think it's Shackman.
And he's responsible for WandaVision, which may very well be the best MCU series, Marvel series on Disney Plus. So, okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep an open mind. I'll go in with an open mind, and maybe just maybe I'll get beyond that production design. we'll see.
Isn't it crazy though? And again, no disrespect to Shackman, because obviously, WandaVision was very popular, but what does it say, do you think, about the world we live in with film, that a first-time director is being given a $200 million project? I mean, these are movies that, or whatever it is, who knows? I mean, I'm sure it's not cheap, but we're talking like these big summer tent poles, and you're getting first-time directors stepping into these roles. I mean, that's a lot of pressure. You could go into director jail pretty quickly if you don't make a hit.
I don't know if that's going to happen to the director of the last Captain America movie, but it could. I think that's done $500 million worldwide. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
It tells me two things. It tells me that it may be a way to nurture young directors. It may be a way to save a little money. But it also tells me that based on WandaVision, Kevin Feige may just have trusted this guy. So,
well, and it also maybe speaks a little bit. I know we've talked about this before, where Feige is very involved, needless to say, in the production of these movies, and you're probably not going to coax Steven Spielberg to the MCU, even if you're offering the world as your oyster, so to speak, because he wants to have creative control, and Feige probably not going to let that happen, because they have pushed away, other directors like Edgar Wright, for instance, was pushed away the Ant-Man series because of creative differences. And so that's probably why you get a lot of these first-time directors. And then obviously I know Chloe Zhao came out, into the Eternals, because obviously at the time she needed to make a studio movie to get that credibility in that world, to where she could go back and start making more, Nomadland like, independent projects. But yeah, I think it's just that's one of the big differences, I think, that have happened between Marvel and DC, where, DC has never had a shortage of talent behind the camera or in front of the camera, but, they've had Oscar winner, Oscar nominated writers, script, penning scripts for their movies. They've had well-known directors that have that have made the movies. I think their problem was their focus was just off, and they didn't have a cohesive plan on how to tell their DC story, whereas Marvel did, and they followed that playbook to a T, and it worked out pretty damn well for them during their first, 15 phases, whatever, the end of Avengers Endgame was. But I know that you enjoyed Thunderbolts, so maybe this is a step in the right direction for first steps here to kind of kick off the big blockbuster Marvel movies again, with Avengers Doomsday coming out next year. Of course, Robert Downey Jr. coming back as Victor Von Doom. So Doctor Doom's going to be in there, so the Fantastic Four should probably too, and maybe we'll see them battle each other at some point soon.
We shall see.
All right. Well, not a lot of other movies to talk about. And it's two big movies, I think, for July. August, look, we've talked about August and September as sort of among the doldrums of cinema, but there are some interesting movies coming out in August. And every now and then you get a good hit, like a Tropic Thunder came out in August. So it's not uncommon for a good, fun movie to come out in August. We have Leslie Nielsen made Lieutenant Frank Drebin in the Naked Gun movies from the 80s. I know you write about that. Liam Neeson is taking on that mantle in the Naked Gun that comes out August 1st. So this is sort of an interesting, the way the trailer played out when it was first released. He's not just playing Frank Drebin, he's playing Frank Drebin Jr., so he is the son. And then they've also incorporated other actors into the fold as sons of the other people that worked at the department, including O.J. Simpson, which I have to admit, that part of the trailer was so funny. Do you have any hopes for this movie, for The Naked Gun?
I don't know, and it depends on what the humor is. I think that and let's face it, it's Airplane style humor. Airplane pioneered that brand of humor.
Right.
I don't know if audiences older or younger than myself, and even younger than you, will get it.
Probably not.
So therein lies a question. How will the humor play? I think this is a movie that's going to have to rely on word of mouth more than anything.
Yeah.
So
and it's definitely possible that it could just be cratered by early reviews and things like that too. It's very possible. I don't have a lot of high hopes for it, but I'm hoping that it's good. I enjoyed the Leslie Nielsen movies from the 80s. Obviously, I was, a youngling at the time, but have grown up to watch them as well. And, I think they're hoping that Liam Neeson just has this cult following of fans that love those Liam Neeson one-word ass-kicking movies kind of deal where he just kills every bad guy in the history of the world in an hour and a half. And maybe they'll have that, but then on the cherry on top is that there's some fun, humorous things that go on. So I'm hopeful for it, but I'm not anticipating a big box office return, and I'm not really anticipating many people, critics, audiences really loving it either.
We shall see, but I suspect you're right on that. It's like even the first movie, the television series Police Squad, evolved into the Naked Gun movies.
Right.
Even that first movie was met with lukewarm to warm reviews. So there we go.
Yeah. Well, there are two movies coming out, and I'm sure you can probably imagine the ones I'm interested in. There are two movies coming out in the month of August that will feature two very fine directors and writers. Spike Lee will have a movie coming out, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But first, a movie that I'm very hopeful for is Caught Stealing. This is Austin Butler and Vincent D'Onofrio's team up with Darren Aronofsky, one of the most... I don't know if I'd say he's an enigma, because he's shown great talent. Requiem for a Dream, The Wrestler, Black Swan. But then he's also showed that sometimes things don't always turn out the way you want them to. The Fountain, The Whale, I don't think was super successful. But the thing about it is, when Darren Aronofsky has a movie coming out, it's kind of almost required viewing for cinephiles. And Caught Stealing, pairs him up with Austin Butler, who is a great flavor of the time right now actor. And I think that was a great pairing for him, because I think more so than anything, he wants to try to make something that's commercially viable as well, that will allow him to continue making his films. And then Butler gets a chance to work with a famed director as well. And here they team up for a former baseball player gets caught up in the seediness of 1990s era New York. I mean, this seems like the grittiness of The Wrestler. Maybe it's going to be that stylish movie like what Requiem for a Dream and Black Swan. So I'm very excited about this. What say you about Caught Stealing?
I'll be honest with you. It got on my radar when I saw the name Vincent D'Onofrio. Yeah. Then I saw Oh, Austin Butler. And see, I think we've discussed this before. This guy, with his career, is making all the right moves, I think. Because he could have just been in pretty boy roles,
Yes.
transitioning from his model career, and he goes now. Elvis wasn't exactly hurtful to the eyes to most women, so that makes sense to me.
Right.
But he goes into the bike riders. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
With a character that's morally suspect, and he downplays those looks, and now he's doing this. I mean,
And he did it with Dune Part 2 as well, where he's, it's funny because everybody is talking, and I'm not disagreeing with this assessment, but everybody's talking about Timothy Chalamet is that next one, that next DiCaprio, or his time is coming for an Oscar win. And it may happen this year. He's got a movie, Marty Supreme, that's being touted as a potential Oscar hopeful. But I think people kind of sleep a little bit on Austin Butler,
I would agree with
who's also got that seat at the table, who also has those movie. I mean, he's almost like a young looking Brad Pitt. He's a good looking man. He can act. Now, maybe he stays in character too long after his movie's release. That's up for debate. But this is a guy that I completely think you hit it on the head. He's picking his projects wisely. He is working with talent. He is taking on roles that aren't well, you're a good-looking 20-something. You should be starring in every rom-com like Matthew McConaughey did in the 90s. He's not doing that. He is taking his own path. And I think when people talk about Timothy Chalamet and his time coming, I think they also need to start thinking about Austin Butler, because he is another one of those actors that really is getting lost in the shuffle, only because he's taking on these interesting roles as opposed to the most commercially viable roles.
I think he realizes, and obviously I can't speak for him, but I think he realizes, you know what? I'm young. I can get paid later. So why not put this on my filmography now, my resume now?
Yeah.
And it'll always be there, as
Right.
opposed to someone who goes into those expected pretty boy roles, puts that on their resume first, and then when they want to do something more serious, they're going to have to fight the battle. Well, can you do that?
Matthew McConaughey had to fight some battles
Exactly.
to get movies like Dallas Buyers Club, to get even Interstellar. Like, it wasn't like he was just always on Christopher Nolan's radar. And then when Interstellar came up, Nolan's like, I'm plucking, I think Nolan even said he had to watch the movie Mud to kind of understand, like, McConaughey is not just some by the numbers pretty boy actor that can't do anything. So, but yeah, you're right. Austin Butler is taking a different path, and the money's going to be there. And honestly, this is a guy that is just proving that he can do a variety of different things, which is going to serve him well in the future. And it's not to take away anything from Chalamet, because I think Chalamet can do the same too. But it's interesting because Chalamet is the star of Dune. And then Dune Part 2, you have Austin Butler coming in as a secondary character. And obviously they have a cousin-on-cousin battle in that sequence as well towards the end of the movie. But it just kind of goes to show you that I think people think of Chalamet because he's out there and it seems to be more in the public eye. And, he made Wonka and other movies. But Butler is right there with him. And I think you're going to see these two guys battling out for Oscars throughout their career.
De Niro, Pacino,
Yeah.
De Niro.
Yeah. Well, another summer coming to an end, and the good thing is that it's going to be coming to an end with Spike Lee. Oh, go ahead.
I almost hesitated putting this in here, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. So August 22nd, Spike Lee teaming up with Denzel Washington in Highest to Lowest. And I will say, I want to give you credit in reading what you wrote about Denzel and Spike Lee team-ups. This will be their fourth team-up. there are four previous team ups, I should say. Mo Better Blues, the masterpiece you called Malcolm X, which is masterpiece, but your two underrated, He Got Game and Inside Man. I was a big fan of both of those movies too, and I love Spike Lee. Sometimes Spike Lee can be hit and miss, but when he hits, he hits.
Black Klansman, Denzel's son. Man, that was good. But
25th Hour as well was a very underrated post 9/11 masterwork by him that I really, really enjoyed, with Edward Norton, Barry Pepper, Philip Seymour Hoffman, among others.
He Got Game basically predicted the NCAA and college sports as it exists now.
Yeah, that's true.
So give him credit for that. He saw that coming. Inside Man, which is nothing but a simple freaking heist film.
Yeah.
And it might be in my top. It's in my top two. Malcolm X and Inside Man with Do the Right Thing at 3. Because
I love Do the Right Thing. Do the Right Thing is my number one Spike Lee. It is first of all, the tension building in that movie, the writing, the directing, the style, the flair that Lee has. And it just superbly acted by everybody in that movie. It was, I mean, it's a difficult subject to watch because it's not necessarily a happy-go-lucky, commercially viable movie, but it is such an important movie to the 1980s. It stands the test of time, decade after decade after decade that passes, and it will continue to stand the test of time as a pinnacle in race relations in America, and the fever pitch that seems to be boiling over at any given moment.
I agree. I absolutely agree. But Inside Man, like I said, was a simple heist film, and that's the genius of it. That is the absolute genius of it. Spike Lee doing a heist film and just he taking the genre to another level and him and Denzel, again, collaboration, not director actor, collaboration,
right?
Which is why you've seen them work together so many times. That is just, if that's on any movie channel or any channel, I don't just use it for background noise. I stop and watch it because it's that good. This is about Denzel's playing a record executive in this one. I get the impression we're gonna get more of an Inside Man vibe than a Spike Message vibe. Let's try that, and I'm okay with that because of Inside Man. And the weird part is I nearly hesitated putting this in because it's gonna be on Apple TV Plus 3 weeks after it hits theaters, and I think it deserves more of a theatrical release than that they're gonna give it. But okay, whatever.
Yeah. The only reason, I mean, I say all the great things I've said about Spike Lee just to say that I'm a little expectations lowered on this one, even though it is Denzel and Spike Lee back together again. There's two reasons why. Well, three reasons, I think. First, it is a remake of Kurosawa's High and Low from '63, which sometimes you can remake and reimagine things, like The Departed, for instance, was a great reimagining of Infernal Affairs. The second thing that really kind of started turning me off, was the release date, August 22nd. Again, but it's also an Apple TV Plus movie, so it's just kind of we'll throw it on a date because we can throw it on a date. But the biggest thing that probably caused me to concern about this was the movie was rejected from competition at Cannes. Now, I know that's not always the end-all, be-all, but Lee had just served as a grand jury member at Cannes, and then they rejected his film, which I thought, is that a sign that they just don't think it's up to snuff for a Spike Lee joint? Or is it maybe the competition was too stiff? I don't know, but those were the three reasons that I paused a little bit on this film.
Perhaps they thought it didn't look proper.
That is possible too.
because he was in the grand jury last year, or is it this year he's on the grand jury?
Or maybe it was this year. It was either this year or last year.
So that is a definite possibility.
Yeah.
Doesn't change how I feel about Spike and
Oh
Denzel.
no, absolutely not. He is an all-timer filmmaker. He really is. He's changed the game in a lot of ways. I mean, he is a. It's like when you watch a Spike Lee movie, you know you've watched the Spike Lee movie from its look, its writing, it's not. And I know what you're saying about Inside Man was almost a departure, visually from a visual perspective, shooting different angles like he would shoot in some of his other movies, like Do the Right Thing, where he would turn the camera tilt and things like that. And, really kind of jarring, impacting visual style. Whereas Inside Man was sort of a more modest, but well shot, well crafted caper. I mean, it was a very good cat and mouse game between Clive Owen and Denzel Washington. I thought it was a great showcase for Clive Owen at the time as well. But yeah, so I mean, I still have a lot of hope. I mean, I know he remade Old Boy like 12, 15 years ago or whatever, and that wasn't as successful of a remake. And I know that might be why people might pause a little bit on the high and low Kurosawa remake. I'm just hopeful. And hopefully it's not the Cannes issues or anything like that, but I'm very hopeful. It is going to be at Cannes, like you mentioned. It's going to premiere at Cannes, just out of competition, which again, not every movie is going to be in competition. Some movies just want a Cannes premiere date so they can get those early eyeballs on the screen to watch them and, get that feedback. And then all of a sudden now you can go back and say, oh, we won the audience prize, or we won a special recognition or whatever. And then you can start building up your case for advertising when it comes out in August. But definitely still interested in it no matter what. And, it's a great team up with Spike Lee and Denzel Washington. And honestly, I know Spike Lee's gone the streaming route mostly the last few years. And maybe that's out of necessity because a lot of Martin Scorsese's doing it too, where a lot of filmmakers are wanting to make, they want to make their own movies and they don't want to compromise on the budget and come in, Apple, we'll make highest to lowest, whatever you want. You're Spike Lee, it's Denzel Washington, let's go for it. And that's one of the benefits I've always thought about streaming is that some filmmakers you don't want them to have to compromise. You don't want Scorsese to compromise. You don't want Spike Lee to compromise. And given the budget that they would have at Netflix or Amazon or Apple, they don't have to. And that's the benefit of streaming right now.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the very end of summer, we have Benedict Cumberbatch and Olivia Colman taking on Divorce in The Roses. This is a reimagining of the 1989 movie War of the Roses. Are you interested in this movie?
Actually, I am, because Benedict Cumberbatch. And I've seen the Red Band trailer. It's absolutely profane.
Okay.
They're not throwing any punches. So, yeah, I'm down. I'm ready to go. It's acidic. It really is.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm going to check it out.
Hopefully you ever wonder, and again, I'm not saying the War of the Roses isn't a popular movie, but, War of the Roses was 1989, so... I mean, do you ever wonder like what the criteria for remakes are? I mean, you're talking about a 1989. Now, for the most part, they're not going to be like in the advertising trailer saying a reimagining of the 89 movie, The War of the Roses. But, I mean, you're going to catch wind, whether it's The Naked Gun or The Roses here in this case. I mean, does it really matter if they even say like, yeah, this is a remake or a reimagining? Because does it really matter at this point where you're just making a movie and you're kind of pulling from a movie that maybe inspired you as a filmmaker or whatever it may be?
I don't know. See, I wrote this with my review of Four Seasons. It's like, I didn't see first I didn't see a need to remake something like that. Then I looked at it from my 1981 self to now, and I had to remember just how much society has changed since then. So, and 1989. That's 30, no, 20, no, that's 36 years ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So a lot of
Well,
shit.
I won't mind, Cumberbatch and Coleman sparring at one another. That would probably make for a fun time, at the movies.
Yeah, and see, the male female dynamic even back then was still very patriarchy. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was very male centric.
Right.
There's just some words I can't pronounce, including patriarchal. There we go. Um, and if they work with that dynamic, if they could do something that way, and it looks like they are, yeah, I'm interested, absolutely,
Okay.
and I can't think of two better actors to do it with.
This is one of those movies where I'm kind of intrigued by the tone. Tone can matter, and it can make or break a movie in a lot of ways. And Jay Roach is the director, and he's made Austin Powers movies. He's made Trumbo. He's made The Campaign, which I thought was a hilarious movie in 2012 with Zach Galifianakis and Will Ferrell. So I wonder if this is what kind of a tone does this take? Is it going to be over the top? Is it going to be dramatic? I mean, so I am kind of intrigued to see the direction of this movie. I don't imagine it's going to be slapsticky like an Austin Powers movie where it's satirizing, the superhero or the James Bond hero game. But I do wonder if this is going to have sort of a satirical look at certain things, or maybe, like you said, the patriarchy in society at, depending on when this is set as well.
I just knowing Jay Roach. Wow, that's one interview I forgot about. Did the junket for the first Austin Powers movie.
Okay.
We'll still have the martini shaker from it. At any rate, I think he's gonna blend that acidic tone with the satire.
Okay.
How much it'll make you think, I don't know, but there's fodder there to make you think. So
Right.
hopefully he uses it.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we've pretty much covered the summer, but are there any other movies out there that you're just waiting to see? I know August, they have a few other movies: Clicker, East of Wall, Freakier Friday, Nobody 2. I mean, any other movies that you're waiting for in the August month?
No, until I started writing this thing and doing the research, I wasn't looking forward to August at all.
Yeah, that's true. Well, normally no one is looking forward to August, George. It's not exactly a haven for epic movies, but we got Aronofsky and Spike Lee and Jay Roach. Who knows? Maybe we'll have something fun in August for a change.
Maybe we will. That would be nice.
All right. Well, I know the box office took a little bit of a break, or not the box office, but the release calendar took a little bit of a break with Thunderbolts dominating. And what's coming up on the horizon from you? Do you have anything streaming or coming out in theaters that you're going to check out?
I don't know that they're screening Final Destination, which is fine by me. I shouldn't say that.
You're not interested in the whatever version of Final Destination this is?
No, dude, I am not.
No.
You know what? The next movie I see, it looks like Mission Impossible. Okay. Perhaps Lilo and Stitch.
All right. Any streaming on the horizon for you, or any streaming that you're getting caught up on?
I spent 2 hours this afternoon getting my Warner Brothers app straight so I could look at Dune, which it looks like they're setting it up to be their next great Sunday night series.
Okay. Are you talking about Dune Prophecy?
No. Wait a second. Duster.
Oh, Duster. Yeah. Well, that's actually going to be a Max original, so you don't even have to go to HBO you go to HBO Max, but you don't even have to worry about the Sunday night premiere on that. I believe that starts on the 15th, so I'm interested to see that too.
I started checking out Murderbot.
Is that any worth anything?
I got one episode in, and then I had realized I needed to start watching Duster.
Okay.
I am looking. Apple TV has a slate of of streaming movies out this summer that I didn't include
Okay.
because I wanted this to strictly be theatrical.
Okay.
Fountain of Youth is coming out this month.
Yeah, Guy Ritchie. Oof.
Um,
Way to be the buzzkill here, George.
sorry.
Sorry,
Uh,
Guy Ritchie. I don't mean that. I don't mean a slight against you, Guy Ritchie. I just don't.
you know, they've got
Oh,
a Bono documentary coming out.
okay.
Um, let's see what else is here. Echo Valley with Julianne Moore, Domhnall Gleeson, Fiona Shaw.
Okay.
They're not messing around this summer.
They are, and they just re-upped the studio for a season 2, which
I
I'm
knew you'd
excited
like
about.
that.
I'm very happy about that. Although I have to admit, I'm a couple of episodes behind. I've let a few episodes roll over here, so I need to get caught up on the studio. But look, it's been a fun show, and that first episode is some of the best TV that you will watch all season.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, will we talk Duster next week then, or do you have anything else maybe on the?
We will talk Duster and whatever else we need to catch up streaming wise. But yeah.
All right. Well, as always, you can read everything, including George's big summer movie preview at beaconjournal.com. George, an early happy birthday to you, and we will see you next week and talk Duster.
All right, dude. Take it easy.